It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
All that glisters is not gold. How often have we heard that told? Well, Donald Trump hasn't heard it. The foreigners have worked him out. Give him the trashiest, most meretricious, flash, fake gold, and he's yours. He'll drop your tariffs faster than he used to drop his drawers. And all over the internet today has been the most horrific display of mass murder, torture and genocide. And it's taking place in Sudan. It's Africans doing it to Africans. It's Muslims doing it to Muslims and chanting the name of God as they cold-bloodedly murder people. We'll be talking about the atrocities of the RSF, the Western-backed, at least Israeli-backed and Western ally-backed mercenary force that is tearing Sudan apart. And we'll be looking at the ceasefire in Gaza, which left only 98 people slaughtered in the last 24 hours, most of them women and children. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows, the only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Donald Trump is on something of a rampage through Asia, through Southeast Asia, where the locals have got him sussed. If you offer him something cheap, nasty, garish, vulgar, and that looks like gold, he is yours for life. In fact, when he was offered in South Korea today a crown, he said he'd like to wear it home. Take it out the wrapper. I don't want it wrapped. I don't need a gift box. Give me it now. I'll wear it on my head. And he wasn't joking. Supposedly the Americans are involved in a no kings movement. Well, Donald Trump is definitely keen to be their king, and you wouldn't rule it out. But he does meet real life when he meets the Chinese President Xi Jinping in a day or so, when they begin to deal with the trade talks, with the tariff wars that have devastated the stock markets and devastated the supply lines of international business these last few months. Well, there's no doubt who won the tariff war. The West won the Opium War. The West definitely practiced a century of humiliation on China, but it's Donald Trump that faces humiliation in these talks. He is ready to drop entirely all the tariffs that he's imposed on China. Now, I lost count, you probably did too. How many and how much were the tariffs on the bewildering array of essential items that China sells to the United States of America? But you don't need to remember them now because they are all about to go. A harsh lesson has been learned, and not just by the United States. China's superpower status is not just in its armed forces. It's not just in its 1.45 billion population. It's not just in its soft power. It is in its hard economic power. A hard economic power that is now insurmountable. It seems the West have decided that China's power is here to stay, that it cannot be contained, that it cannot be rolled back. At least that's my take. Others have a different one. But it seems to me the meaning of the fantastic softening of Trump's rhetoric for the last few months, he's been virtually threatening war short of tomahawks, economic war for sure. He's been threatening it on China, and now he is not. And he's about to make a trade deal with China which definitely establishes the truth of what China has just announced this very day, that China is no longer a developing country. If you've been to China, as we have in the last couple of weeks, the idea that China could be described as a developing country was always fantastic and absurd, but it's now official. Xi Jinping said China can no longer be described as a developing country. Sure, there's inequality between one man, one woman, and another. Sure, there's still dramatic inequality between one province and another. But the equalization of wealth is rapidly transforming China. Well, we're still in Minsk, and that's the capital of Belarus. As it happens, we're going by train to Moscow. But the other international guests at the Forum on Security are not so lucky. They don't have a visa necessarily to enter Russia from Belarus, and we're hoping to get back home, either to European countries or North America or even further afield, but they now cannot, because NATO has told the yapping chihuahuas in Latvia and Lithuania to close their borders on the absurd pretext, the old China pretext actually, that unauthorized balloons have been spotted in the sky, and until we know who sent them and for what, well, there'll be no traffic. So most people came by train or car through Latvia or through Lithuania, but they will not be leaving that way. European Union customers are supposed to be exempt, but they have not turned out yet to be. My point is that the onslaught against Belarus, totally unjustified, which has done nothing to anybody, hasn't fired a shot at anybody, is still continuing. And of course the reason is because Belarus stands with Russia. But then most of the world stands with Russia, and we're going to make ourselves a lot of enemies in Western countries if we keep this pretense up much longer that you can sanction Russia to surrender. This very evening, there is a twin military collapse going on in the Ukrainian armed forces, and that place I've told you about so often that you're probably calling your sons Kupyansk is about to fall finally to the Russian armed forces. But it's not the only one. Right across the line, right across the front line, the Russian armed forces are carrying all before them, and the number of Ukrainian forces surrendering with a promise of a safe conduct from Russia is now rapidly increasing. Thousands are expected in the next couple of days because 10,500 Ukrainian soldiers are now trapped in a kessel, the kind that von Paulus was trapped in Stalingrad in 1944. That has now been the fate of a big Ukrainian army. 10,500 men are now in negotiation to surrender. And the territory thus captured is strategically vital to the Ukrainian war effort. And it's distinctly possible. We'll talk to Scott Ritter, the real expert, about this later in the show. But it's distinctly possible that before there can be a meeting in Budapest, this war might be over. The Ukrainians have decided they don't want to die for Zelensky. They don't want to die for the corrupt oligarchy that sustains him in power. And they're voting with their feet. Either their men surrendering at the front or their men and women fleeing the country. 9 million Ukrainians have fled the country. And some of them are quite patriotic still. Some of them still support the war effort, but not to the extent of actually joining it. They are the same kind of draft dodgers that Donald Trump once was. Donald Trump dodged 4 drafts, and that's why he's never seen war up close and personal. That's why it's all some kind of joke to him. He had bone spurs, the poor lamb. It didn't stop him having a lifetime of swinging golf clubs across even his own golf courses, and it didn't stop him dancing, including today, to YMCA. I don't know if anyone's told Donald yet. It's an international gay anthem, but he does love dancing to it. And his bone spurs miraculously seem to have cured themselves. I mention that because Donald Trump's about to enter yet another war. It's an extraordinary thing that the man who calls himself the peace president, the man who really thinks he's got a chance of the Nobel Peace Prize, is about to start gratuitously, for no reason whatsoever, another war. Don't tell me it's about fentanyl, as Senator Rand Paul pointed out the other day. Venezuela supplies none of the fentanyl which enters the United States. Not, he said, not much of it, none of it. It all comes through Mexico. It has nothing to do with Venezuela. And if you're believing the casus belli, that Trump is going to invade, attack, bomb Venezuela because of drug cartels, you are such an idiot. You should not be watching the mother of all talk shows. And I advise you to switch off right now. If you believe that this has anything to do with drugs, you are an idiot. There's no drugs coming to the United States from Venezuela, least of all in boats, that would require 40 refuelings if they were to reach Miami. I mean, as ferrying illegal drugs go, sending a boat, a speedboat from Venezuela to the coast of Miami would just be the most ridiculous way you could possibly imagine. No, these extrajudicial killings, well, let's call them what they are, these acts of murder on the high seas that the Americans are boasting about, that the White House is posting as official White House films, and that the American military are being ordered to carry out, these are pure and simple acts of mass murder. And many of the people murdered so far haven't even been Venezuelans. Never mind not Venezuelan drug traffickers. They were Colombian citizens, fishermen. They were from Trinidad and Tobago, which inexplicably is participating in the war drive that Donald Trump is currently garnering. Ironically, in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a full battle group. There's aircraft carriers, battleships, and the whole area is now bristling with fighter jets and with the B-1 bombers that presumably will be dropping their ordnance on downtown Caracas sometime soon. There's no doubt that the US can shell from the sea the people of Venezuela. There's no doubt that they can fire missiles at them. There's no doubt that they can bomb them from on high, but they can't occupy Venezuela. I'm here to tell you that. First of all, the US doesn't have enough soldiers to invade Venezuela, which is a truly gigantic country, which is, as my good friend Garland Nixon put it, either jungle or mountain or mountains with jungle. It is the ideal place for a guerra prolongada. That's what you're in for, Donald. A guerra prolongada, prolonged war. And any American occupation forces stationed in Venezuela will be going home in boxes in very large numbers. So if you are the mother or father of an American serviceman, I advise you to do everything that you can to dissuade Donald Trump from this course. And that's even before we calibrate the fact that Russia has just signed a strategic partnership, including a military partnership with Venezuela, as has China, as has Iran. So if you really want World War III to be waged in the barrios, in the mountains, in the jungles of Venezuela, well, be my guest. One part of me hopes that you do, because the United States is behaving like a man-child, like a delinquent child. Trump said today, any country we make war on, we will destroy it. He is behaving like a caricature, like a Bugsymalone kid's caricature of the Mafia 5 families. He is disgracing the great people of the United States with the threats, vulgar, base threats that he is now daily, even hourly, engaged upon. I need to move on because there are many, many issues that we're going to touch on tonight. If, like me, you've seen some of the horrors that happened over the last day or two after a prolonged siege of more than 400 days, the rebel forces, the RSF, backed by certain Arabian Gulf countries, they finally broke the siege. They finally entered the territory they'd been besieging, and they proceeded to cold-bloodedly massacre the people inside. Mothers with their babies, old men, young women being raped, and none of this is hostile propaganda claims. All of this was filmed by the Sudanese rebels that we used to call the Janjaweed themselves. They took the videos of themselves cold-bloodedly massacring people for no reason. People on their knees begging for mercy, ruthlessly and brutally murdered on the cameras of their murderers, and then put on social media by their murderers. Whoever is arming these people, whoever is backing these people, whoever in any way is enabling these people should this evening hang their heads in black burning shame. If I or anybody associated with me had supported what we've seen today on social media and the boasts of mass rapes taking place, I would never be able to show my face in public again. And I hope that those who have facilitated this will now bring it dramatically and immediately to an end. This nihilistic, anarchistic, this brutal, sadistic, demonic violence is enough almost to make you lose your faith in human nature. And when you hear the name of God being chanted as the crime is being committed by the criminal that's committing it and videoing it so he can put it out later, you begin to lose all kinds of faith, I must say. I never had any faith that Israel was going to observe a ceasefire in Gaza, and my lack of faith was definitely not misplaced. 98 Palestinians were murdered yesterday. 74 of them were women and children. It was a frenzy of murderous violence endorsed by the Vice President and the President of the United States, endorsed by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And Israel has just said the ceasefire is back in place. We had our frenzy. We murdered our 100 Palestinian women and children mainly. But now the ceasefire's on again, and the Americans are taking credit for it. We've got so much to discuss tonight, and we've got two of our biggest and best guests. First, Professor Seyed Marandi from Tehran. He's up first to talk about the events in the Middle East region. And then, later in the show, the one and only Scott Ritter to talk about the dramatic events taking place right now in the Donbas in Ukraine. Stay tuned. It's the mother of all talk shows. His approval ratings are in the toilet. He won a huge mandate well less than a year ago, and he's thrown it all away. He has an approval rating of just under 40% now, and a disapproval rating of all the others. There are no don't knows in the issue of Donald Trump. And so he has maximized the number of people who hate him or dislike him, and he has systematically undermined the voting base that formerly liked him. And I don't know whether that is because of his donors, because he's intellectually challenged, because it's of his age. I really don't know.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
All talk shows that has been broadcast from Minsk in Belarus. No sanctions are being broken in the course of this broadcast, Mr. Policeman, anti-terrorist policeman in London Airport. None. But the blackboard has just disappeared, so I'm not able to give you the poll, and I'm not able to give you the telephone numbers, but I will. And indeed, they are going along the bottom of the screen now. But Professor Marandi doesn't need any introduction. For all this time, his sage wisdom has talked us through many a crisis, talked us through many atrocities. But it's my great regret that I have to talk to him this evening on the atrocities taking place by Muslims on Muslims in a Muslim country, namely Sudan. Professor Mohammed Marandi, welcome as always to the mother of all talk shows. I've seldom been as horrified as I was today. Perhaps I oughtn't to have watched them, but I watched so many videos today of such crimes as are almost unspeakable, and the more unspeakable because the name of God was being chanted by the murderers as they slayed innocent and defenseless people. Most people watching this will not know much about the conflict in Sudan, who's who and what's what, and I'm hoping your expertise can enlighten them. What is happening in Sudan, Professor?
Well, Sudan was the largest country in Africa, George, and you know Africa better than I, and you know Sudan better than I. But the West didn't want the Sudan to be a strong and powerful force, and they began destroying the country with the separatist movement in South Sudan. And now South Sudan, which is separate, is just as poor and impoverished and full of infighting and death and destruction as is the rest of the country. Of course, the last few days, the last couple of days have been extraordinary. And I think really the root cause here is the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates has been funding the RSF, and they've been funding groups across the board. And this is a problem that exists both with the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and some of these other oil-rich Arab dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, which have been funding groups everywhere. They're, of course, both in the U.S. camp, both Qatar and the Emirates, and they've been funding differing groups in different parts of the world. But in this case, the Emirates has been pushing very hard, and this group has been utterly brutal and barbaric and murderous. And I saw one or two clips, and I just couldn't finish watching. But this is not over. It's going to the RSF is consolidating its strength, and I think that they're moving towards dividing Sudan yet again into two parts. But we'll have to see what lies ahead. But it's extraordinary how ruthless and murderous people can be, just taking ordinary people and slaughtering them. What we've seen for the last 2 years in Gaza has made everyone, I think, sick enough, and now watching the scenes in Sudan just make it much more saddening. I don't want to say depressing, because none of us should become depressed. We have to remain active and remain steadfast in our activism against empire and against the brutality of these dictatorships and ruthless regimes in the region, especially these wealthy oil and gas regimes which are bound to the empire.
They've got such a cuddly reputation in the West. The United Arab Emirates, which once are revered in the time of the late Sheikh Zayed, he built something special in the United Arab Emirates, and they've got such a cuddly image in the West. People go there on holidays, they invest in apartments there, they have sports competitions galore there. They're the best friends of Donald Trump, the best friends of the British, and so on. And yet they are arming and funding slaughterers that make ISIS look like Boy Scouts. I've never seen anything like, even in the ISIS, the height of ISIS, what I watched today. How would they justify that, Professor? How do they say to their own people, to their allies, yeah, sure, we're behind that. What are you going to do?
Well, these are absolute monarchies in the Emirates and Qatar. You cannot say anything there. The people in these countries have no rights. Overwhelmingly, the people in these countries are, as I'm sure you know, indentured servants, if not slaves. And those people have absolutely nothing. They have absolutely no opportunity to say anything. Then you have the better off indentured servants and slaves that are from the West. And then you have the citizens. But the citizens, they have no right to protest or speak out against these policies. And what's happening today is not really new. The genocide in Yemen that the Saudis and the Emiratis carried out for years was something that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people in that country, and they were using mercenaries from Sudan against the people of Yemen back then to carry out genocide too. So this is not new for the current ruler in the Emirates. And the Emirates is also well known for other forms of corruption, both prostitution, but more importantly perhaps is the fact that a lot of the drug trade that goes on in this part of the world, the money goes through the Emirates, just like Colombia, where the president spoke about the powerful people behind the drug trade being in New York. When he said that they are not far off from the United Nations building. The people who are behind the drug trade in Latin America, and right now we see Trump bombing boat after boat, murdering innocent people from different nationalities. The real people behind this are, many of them are in the United States. And in our part of the world, the people behind the drug trade are largely in the United Arab Emirates, or if they're not in the Emirates, the money flows through the Emirates.
I'm glad you made that segue to Latin America, because I wanted to come to Venezuela next. Both of us are well familiar with Venezuela. We both know that we can't speak for the whole country, of course, but we are both aware that there are millions of Venezuelans who are armed and ready to fight any invasion. I find it hard to believe that Trump is going to land soldiers on boots on the ground in Venezuela, because that would be the end of his presidency. It would be marked just as Lyndon Johnson's was in the Vietnam era. It would be marked forever. He would be marked forever as the president who caused massive military casualties amongst his own armed forces. But it seems likely that they're going to start bombing, shelling the people of Venezuela, and it's difficult to see what good could come of that. It certainly will not stop the flow of refugees. It certainly will not stop the flow of drugs from Latin America to North America, because of the reasons you've just adumbrated, and the pictures will not look good either in international public opinion. What's your take as a former professor of American studies on what Trump is really up to in Venezuela?
Well, I think that if we look at what the Israeli regime is doing in West Asia and how it's trying to control West Asia, that is in the interests of the United States. If these family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf are weakened and intimidated in a way in which the United States has further control of the oil and gas wealth, and then you combine that with the oil wealth in Venezuela, that would leave the United States in a much stronger position. And it would leave China in a more vulnerable position, because China would be increasingly dependent on Russian oil. But I agree completely with what you say about Venezuela. I've been there a few times as well, and it is a beautiful country and a wonderful people, a very friendly people. There's no doubt that despite all the sanctions and the brutality of the sanctions regime, the government has a lot of support. And there's no doubt that that support comes mostly from the lower middle classes. And if the United States were to invade the country, then I think there will be enormous resistance, but also people will flow in from other parts of Latin America, and hostility towards the United States across Latin America will grow. In fact, the United States has succeeded over the years through a combination of both the sanctions and propaganda. They've succeeded in demonizing Venezuela to a degree across the continent. But now, because of the behavior of the United States and the reaction that it's getting, including, for example, from the president of Colombia, people are turning against the United States. And some of those people will join the fight. Venezuela is a part of a continent, as you rightly pointed out. It is full of, part of the Amazon forest is in Venezuela. That's how dense the forest is there, and that's the sort of, it reminds one of Vietnam, and that would be horrific for U.S. soldiers who are supposed to be occupying the country. But I do think that the Americans will probably start bombing. They will provide excuses, just like the Israeli regime does. The Israeli regime says that a soldier died. Who knows if that's how that happened? And then it slaughtered 104 people since last night, and the United States basically supported it and said, yes, there's been no violation. The president, the vice president of the United States. So when the United States can condone mass murder, the slaughter of tens of children last night, and smile and walk away, if that's what American leaders can do in West Asia, they can certainly find an excuse to start slaughtering people in Venezuela. But I think that they're not going. I don't think that the Americans are going to win this one. I think basically what they're going. This is going to be costly. Even the air campaign, having all those ships in the Caribbean is very costly. Then you're going to have people turning against you across the continent, and it's also going to strengthen the government in Venezuela, because people don't like seeing people of their country being slaughtered on boats in the Caribbean without any evidence of wrongdoing. And even if there was wrongdoing, that's the Americans have no right to slaughter people like that. And people in Venezuela are obviously outraged. My friends in Venezuela, who I speak with, and you have many more friends, I know, but they are confident that they will be able to overcome the challenges ahead. But it's very painful. It's very painful nowadays to watch what's going on in Sudan, in Gaza, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific. The United States is a rogue regime. It's always been a rogue regime, but nowadays it's worse than ever before. And even if the United States doesn't have any direct responsibility with regarding what's going on in the Sudan, the United Arab Emirates is a small regime closely allied to the United States and Israel. If the United States wanted this to stop, the Emirates would never stand up against Washington.
One man who is having a whale of a time, even if the rest of us are miserable, is Donald Trump. He's on this madcap tour. He's dancing in Malaysia. God knows why the people of Malaysia were encouraged by an Islamist prime minister to greet him in such a way, but they did. Then he's on board American warships, dancing to YMCA with the Japanese prime minister, looking up adoringly into his eyes. Then he's in Korea, and they're presenting him with guilt. At least it looked cheap gold to me. He seems to be on a gigantic narcissistic ego trip. He never seems to be in the United States. He never seems to be talking about the United States. He's talking as if he was the emperor of the world. But he's about to find out when he meets Xi Jinping, isn't he, that actually the emperor has no clothes.
Yes, I think that the negotiations with China will be very tough. Both you and I were recently in China. We were in the same city, but we miss each other by a few hours. I think that there will be an agreement of sorts between the United States and the Chinese. However, the scope of the agreement is something that I think is unclear so far. But I doubt that Trump will get nearly as much as he pretends that he'll be getting from the Chinese. The Chinese have the upper hand, and they've grown much more confident over the last few years about their position. I think over the last few months, in fact, they've become even more confident. After Liberation Day, when Trump announced those tariffs, and he ultimately had to back down, especially when the bond market became dangerous for the country. The Chinese smelt blood, and that has made ordinary Chinese, or at least the elites that we meet when we're there, much more confident in my view. But if we see that Trump is so arrogant and so happy, it's not because of the Epstein files, and it's not because of all the controversies at home. It is largely because of Muslim leaders, and we saw that in Egypt when we watched that monkey show, and all these regional leaders were surrounding Trump and waiting their turn to be humiliated, putting their hands on their chests to show their friendship and goodwill to this genocidal monster. So when these leaders betray the Palestinian cause the way they do, and they simply go to Cairo to please this man, and in order to get into his good book, then we should not expect anything less than the sort of behavior that we see in Kuala Lumpur, or in Tokyo, or in Seoul.
Well, when Gramsci said almost 100 years ago now that the new world, the old world is dying, the new world struggling to be born, we live in a time of monsters, he can't have imagined the big orange monster that would now be ruling the American empire, and still have a fair few supplicants falling around his feet. Professor Marandi, as always, a pleasure to tour the world with you. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Let me now tell you what the poll is. Do you support the introduction of digital ID? This is in the UK, I presume. Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Don't forget to subscribe. Or if you're in the vanguard, the creme de la creme of my Patreon followers, patreon.com/George Galloway. You can vote there also. 25,000 people have already voted, and it turns out that the most unpopular British Prime Minister in all history has chosen as his flagship policy the most unpopular policy in the entire history of policies in the United Kingdom. Only 2% say yes on Telegram, only 6 on X, 6 on the YouTube community poll, 6 on the YouTube stream, and none on my Patreon page. But it's still worth voting because we want to send the message to the most unpopular Keir Starmer that up with digital ID, we in Britain will not put. If you want to call the show, the numbers are these. It's toll free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. Free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the international number is 0044 203 966 2625. Let me take a quick break, then I'm back with your calls. Stay tuned. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me one brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go straight to the lines. Robert in the great city of Glasgow wants to talk about UK arms to Israel. Robert, welcome.
Hello, George. How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can, very clearly. Is it true that Brendan Rodgers has been sacked?
Hi, George. How you doing? Listen, it's brilliant to talk to you, mate. I watch your show, and believe it or not, sorry, should I turn this? Aye. And my friends in France as well, we listen to you continually. Can you hear me still?
Excellent.
I
Welcome.
can't hear you.
Yeah, very good. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right, thanks, George. George, I was going to talk about but my subject is kind of changed. It's accountability. You know, like you're talking about Johnson going over to Ukraine with money.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about, Blair and his accountability. And then you've got Starmer and his accountability with the Gaza, with the flights over Gaza, which we've just found out which were private jets. Where is the accountability for these people criminally? I mean, as a politician, not an ex-politician, but as someone who I'd like to see personally become Prime Minister, because respect, and you are by far probably the most respectful politician that I've ever witnessed, because of your honesty.
Thank you, Robert.
And I'd like to see
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. I will be, by the way, on the ballot paper in Glasgow next May as the number 2 candidate
George,
in
I'm
our
not
list
actually in Glasgow.
for the Scottish Parliament. Yvonne Ridley will be our first. Go ahead, Rob.
Place at Dundee.
No, in Glasgow. I'll be on the Glasgow list for the Scottish Parliament elections next May.
As I say, George, it's just this accountability. Surely some of these actions of these politicians is criminal.
Well, it's definitely criminal, but being a criminal is now de rigueur. It's now almost mandatory to be at the top of the tree in the British state. And the revolving door, if you watch my film, which you can do on my Patreon page, I think you can also do it on YouTube, the killings of Tony Blair, you'll see the revolving door that they have created for themselves. So our prime ministers get ever younger, and so they've got ever longer to earn once they leave office, and they more and more quickly go in the revolving door and end up earning in the companies that they made rich while they were prime minister. So you don't earn a king's ransom as the British Prime Minister or the Minister of Defence, but you sure will earn a king's ransom once you leave office. And you will do so on the payroll of the companies that you made more profitable when you were in office. So I've got no faith whatsoever that they will face justice in this life. I'm absolutely confident that they will face it in the next life, and I believe that and, of course, hope for that. But the truth is, Robert, we get the politicians we vote for. If we vote for these people, we deserve them. If we don't effectively unite to vote against them, again, we deserve them. If we don't turn up to vote at all, we deserve them. These people are in power, and they're in power on a tiny sliver of the electorate. Keir Starmer got 34% of all those that voted in the British general election. But he only got 19% of all the people who could have voted in that election. And so a guy with 19% of the British public's support got 63% of the seats in the British Parliament. And now he's busy ennobling his friends, cronies, and donors, putting them in the House of Lords, making them members of Parliament for life. So I agree with you. We should fight for accountability. We should demand it. But the ultimate accountability is when they stand up for election. That's why I am clear about the elections in May. Anybody but Labour. Vote for anybody but Labour. Labour must be destroyed. And that is a necessary but not sufficient condition for saving our country. Of course, it goes without saying, Rob, I hope you'll vote for me and Yvonne Ridley in Glasgow next May. Thanks very much for that call. Now, you can leave comments on YouTube. Just scan that QR code on the screen now and leave your comment. Like Jack Klugman, great name, says, Hegseth gathered those generals in their masses to tell them, if you will commit IDF-type atrocities, or you'll be fired when it comes to Venezuela. And Adrift in a Boat says, what God would allow the atrocities we are witnessing on a daily basis? Well, maybe he's giving us all the rope to hang ourselves with on the Judgment Day. Dan Bauer says, what they say of Palestinians is what they think of you. And Ein Sof, E-I-N-S-O-P-H, says the UAE's duplicity in the Israeli atrocities explains their complicity in the Darfur atrocities. And Nikki A says, Maria Machado is Mossad Peace Prize winner who calls for violence on her supposedly fellow countrymen and women. She is evil to the core. Nick is in Los Angeles. He wants to talk about the Pope and King Charles. Well, go ahead, Nick.
Hi, George. Good evening for you, and glad to hear your voice and that you're safe and well. Just following up, actually, on Robert in Glasgow. First off, George, I must say congratulations. It would go amiss without mentioning this. Manchester United at the weekend. I'm a lifelong Manchester City fan, but I'm glad to see you guys start playing some good football. So bless you for that, and enjoy.
We're back, Nick. We're back.
Yeah. And hopefully mentioning Brendan Rodgers, I think he may have resigned from Celtic, but anyway, good Catholic club, so good on him. But going on to Robert's theme, accountability, that's really, he triggered a good train of thought for me on this one, because I was choking yesterday when I saw a picture from Rome where an old, I hate to drop names, but an old childhood friend of mine sort of moved his way up the ranks, and he's married he's married to a friend of mine. He moved up the ranks in the Anglican Church, and he's currently the Archbishop of York. And I saw a picture of him sitting with the Pope in Rome, accompanying, obviously, King Charles, the head of the Anglican Church. And we know the history because you and I have talked about this before, the Anglican Church and its separation from the Catholic Church many, many moons ago. But the accountability and the hypocrisy of this community. I mean, two church leaders, my friend, the Archbishop of York and Pope Leo, the American Pope. Again, I've asked this question of you before. I find it truly suspicious and concerning that at this time in history, even within the church, within the Roman Catholic Church, that an American sits there as head of the church while the atrocities in the world are occurring, and most specifically in Gaza. And as you know, and I know, and I'm sure if you had ever become Pope, George, you, like Christ, would be standing in the rubble of Gaza, daring the IDF to do something against him, to do something against you. And I would be interested in your thoughts on what the future of those two institutions are, and obviously the British monarchy.
Well, I'm ticking the cross because I'm about to say something I haven't said before, and do so with some trepidation. And that is that I had to agree with every word that you said. And every word you implied, I'm going to make explicit. But first of all, I don't myself regard the so-called Anglican Church as a church at all. It was founded, as you and I both know, on the balls of Henry VIII, so that he could fornicate his way across the European royal families, so he could execute whatever wife he was tired of and marry another one. He could divorce anybody, however unjustifiably, and when the Pope wouldn't allow him, he established a church. So it's not really much of a Christian basis for that church. And it has gone horrifically wrong. I don't want to go through all of their sins because I've probably gone far enough already, but they have as much similarity or connection with the Church of Jesus as Manchester City do, and that is not much. They are a seat in the House of Lords for a handful of bishops, including archbishops, including your childhood friend, perhaps, and they can be wheeled out on any LGBTQ plus parade, literally and metaphorically, that is running, whatever bandwagon of wokeness is running. You'll always find the dog collars of the Church of England on them. That's not to say that the people in the church are necessarily unchristian, though some of them definitely are. But we have heroes, retired clerics of the Church of England who are amongst those being dragged off by the British police and charged with terrorism. So, of course, I take my hat off to them. But as to them joining the Roman Catholic Church, I don't want them. But then there's lots of people I don't want. I didn't want Tony Blair in the Roman Catholic Church. And I am now with you. My disappointment with the Pope has turned to something uglier. It has turned to a sense of suspicion as to why Leo got the gig, against all expectations, against all the betting markets, against all of the civil servants in the Curia. Nobody expected Leo to get the gig, and I'm calling for a steward's inquiry into that puff of white smoke. Nick in Los Angeles, fascinating call. Now, have you become a MOATS donor yet? You can join the exclusive club. Just £1, €1, or $1 will do it, but there are people who are much more generous than that. Thank God. Here is tonight's Wall of Fame. Rebecca Corridan, Thierry Laurent, David Waltham, George Swan, and Darrell Hansen. They are on our Wall of Fame this evening, and I take my hat off to all of those. You can become a MOATS donor this night. As easy as pie. Just scan that QR code on the corner of your screen, or visit our new website, moats.tv. My good friend Terence, he's a Roman Catholic too, in Reading. Let's see if he has a point of view on Keir Starmer that we need to hear. Go ahead, Terence.
Well, good evening, Mr. Galloway. I trust you and you are safe and wife is eating and sleeping well as I really wish. Well, today my friend has been on to me for weeks to Prime Minister's question time. He said, you must look at least 10 or 15 minutes to look at it. So today I looked at it, and it wasn't perverse, it'd be hilarious, because there was a question asked of Sir Clear Charmless about killings in Gaza, in Palestine, and Sir Clearly Charmless said he's in touch with the American leaders and he must follow Mr. Trump's 20-point plan, and that was it. Then it went to Sir Davy, another liberal friend of Israel, of course. It went to Sir Ed Davy, and he started talking about Nella Scales passing away. Okay, an actress. For her family, grieve, yes. But on a scale of 1 to 10, world issues when kids are being bludgeoned, beaten and bombed all around the world, Sudan, as we mentioned earlier, let's not take focus off Palestine. That was Prunella Scales. She had and then got worse. Somebody called McMurdoch, an ex-Reform MP, one of the 5 in a minibus. He's gone on his own now. But he had the audacity to say how much he loved the NHS. This is a man left under a cloud, pinching money during COVID, and he's standing there, and I kept thinking to myself, when I made that, I said, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or to ask myself, am I in a parallel universe? So your opinion on ethics, and I also believe that your party, along with Mr. Corbyn's party, along with Plaid Cymru and another load of independents, can get together and can actually get a 20 or 25 ginger group that can really stymie the efforts of all these non-entities. To you, Mr. Galloway.
Yes, well, that's my policy, our policy. We have consistently called for an electoral front. We don't need to and couldn't join each other's parties. We don't need to endorse each other's wider political viewpoint. We can have a limited program of perhaps 4 or 5 points that we can all agree on, and let's run in the election on that. Let's make an electoral agreement. You stand there, we'll stand here. Let's say we can make a case that we're really popular in Rochdale, for example, which manifestly we are. We won the parliamentary seat just a year ago. We came second in the general election, which is a much harder gig than a by-election, and we'll win that seat at the next general election. I have no doubt whatsoever. We have 2 councillors. We're about to have probably 10 councillors come next May. Well, who but us should stand in Rochdale? Ditto in Gorton, in Manchester, for example. And I could name 6, 8, 10 others. But why should we stand and deprive the Green Party of winning a seat again in Bristol? Why should Corbyn stand in a place that's going to deprive Plaid Cymru or even the Scottish Nationalists of a seat? We have to box clever, Terence. We have to think clever. We have to get a map out, get our best brains around a table and say the number 1 task is to defeat Keir Starmer and Labour at the next general election. The number 2 task is to stop the racist tsunami that would be unleashed if Nigel Farage and the Reform Party became the power in Britain. Everyone who agrees with those 2 priorities has no justification for not getting together with others who share that viewpoint, so that we don't, by dint of our own division, allow either Starmer back or even worse, if it is worse, Nigel Farage and Reform in. We can scupper them both, but only if we act with our head. Let me take a quick break, and let me tell you, you don't want to miss Scott Ritter right after this short break. I mean, the number of wars I could talk to him about are such I could be talking to him for the rest of the night, but I'm going to start with the war in Ukraine, which may be approaching an absolutely pivotal point. We'll see if he agrees. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. I defy anyone to contradict the point that I just made, that every person alive today was born of woman. So why would we say that the people in the labor wards, in the maternity units, are people who are giving birth? Why can't we say women? Why can't we say mothers? Why can't we say women who are breastfeeding, mothers who are breastfeeding? Why do we need to say people who are chest feeding? All of these words, and indeed all of the trend that you say you dissociate yourself from, of transgenderism, transmania, I call it, are all taking rights away from women.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Do you support the introduction of digital ID? It's, I realize, a British poll, but it's a very important one. It's just not British. We won't have it. Do you support the introduction of digital ID? Yes or no? Now, Scott Ritter, a very good friend of mine and a very good friend and generous giver of his time on the mother of all talk shows, and one of the most popular guests we ever have, knows everything about war, and increasingly knows everything about international politics too. And I'm very glad to see him again tonight on the mother of all talk shows. Scott, with your background as a former Marine Corps intelligence officer, weapons inspector of note. What do you think is happening on the battlefield in Ukraine? Because I was only a boy soldier, you were a real one, but to me it looks like the skids are under Zelensky's army, and that we might be about to see quite dramatic progress towards ending the war. What do you think?
Well, first let's start by pointing out that Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe after European Russia, and that the Ukrainian army is the only European army capable of standing toe-to-toe with the Russian army. And I need to point this out because I don't want anybody to get the impression that what's going on today on the front lines is an easy war, that Russia's victory, and there will be a Russian victory, is an easy victory. This is a hard-fought war, a hard-fought victory that is predicated on the harsh reality of the algorithms of attritional warfare. Basically, Russia undertook, starting in the fall of 2022, to transition to a mode of warfare which sought to not just destroy hundreds of billions of dollars of Western-provided military equipment, because Russia was no longer fighting just Ukraine. Russia was fighting the collective West. And so Russia had to gear itself to a war of attrition, not against the Ukrainian army as it existed, but the potential of the Ukrainian army over a period of time to receive and absorb significant quantities of very high quality military equipment. This required a strategic approach by the Russians that gave up the concept of big arrows and terrain and instead embraced the concept of very violent conflict along the line of contact that also is designed to destroy Ukraine's ability to sustain this war of attrition in terms of manpower. What we are right now is at a culminating point in this strategy where the Ukrainian manpower has been exhausted. They're down to recruiting 18 to 23-year-olds, and this is it. There's nothing else they can do. They've done 7 mobilizations, maybe 8. They've rebuilt their military 5 times, and it just can't go on in perpetuity. NATO has run out of equipment to give Ukraine. There's nothing left. They're talking about now of contracts that will see fruition years from now, not weeks or months from now, when Ukraine would need this equipment. So Ukraine has run out of equipment and run out of manpower at a time when Russia is outproducing the collective West 4-1 in terms of defense industrial output. The Russians have done a single mobilization in the fall of 2022. Since that time, they've sustained their manpower requirements using standard voluntary-based recruitment contracts. And they have more than enough manpower. They're easy. It's easy for Russia to replace the losses and grow their military. And so we're at the point now where all of the advantages that Russia's been working very hard to accrue are coming to the forefront. We are seeing encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Pokrovsk, a major strategic logistical hub for the Ukrainian forces, 5,500 soldiers surrounded there. In Kupyansk, further north, 5,000 soldiers surrounded. But a report by Mariette Kharelin, a Russian military correspondent, says that all along the front line, there's similar pockets being developed where a potential of 50,000 Ukrainian troops are at risk of being surrounded by Russians who are succeeding in their advances across the entire length of the line of contact. Ukraine simply cannot replace these casualties. There's no strategic reserve left to draw upon. And as Ukraine loses these forces, and notice Russia isn't giving these forces a chance to retreat. Normally, Russia would open up a cauldron and leave an exit route so the Ukrainian forces could retreat. Here, they're going for the more decisive end game, which means they're going to kill these people or capture these people, but these people will not be re-emerging to be part of the fight. This means that Ukraine is about to suffer a major vacuum of manpower capability with nothing to replace it. And this will lead to cascading manpower issues up and down the line of contact. As you mentioned, George, we could be seeing the end game, the beginning of the total collapse of the front line on the part of Ukraine, who, by the way, have fought very hard. We should not ever once say that the Ukrainians haven't put up a fight, and they will continue to fight hard. I point this out to people when I say the bloodiest month of World War II in Europe for the United States of America wasn't D-Day, June of 1944. It wasn't December of 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. It was April 1945, the last full month of the war when the German army was defeated. They fought the hardest and they killed more Americans than any other month. And so even though we're coming to the end game, the notion that this is going to be a cakewalk for Russia is historically absurd.
Well, we must pray that these surrounded soldiers surrender rather than be killed, because the death rate in Ukraine in particular, I mean, I think they sometimes try and confuse us with the stats on this. Russia will have lost, of course, a significant number of people, but Ukraine have lost exponentially more. The scenes of the graveyards of Ukraine are harrowing. I mean, this is First World War levels of casualties, isn't it?
For Ukraine, it absolutely is. Again, the algorithm of warfare is unforgiving. And what the Russians have done is to leverage superior firepower, superior command and control, to create an environment of war where every day Ukraine is losing between 2,000 and 3,000 troops. The Russians are losing 150, 200 troops. Look, America lost 200 men a week in Vietnam at its height, and it broke our back. I'm not trying to soft pedal this at all. Russia's paying a horrific cost for this war in blood, in treasure, etc. But the kill ratio is absolutely unsustainable and unforgiving for Ukraine. And Russia has the capacity to absorb these losses and continue the fight. For the Ukrainians, this is a merciless conflict. Their troops are going to the front line. They can't be rotated out. It's a death sentence to be sent to the front line. If you try to retreat, you come under fire from drones, from artillery. And you know, the life expectancy of a new Ukrainian recruit coming off of their 2 weeks of basic training is measured in days. They go to the front line and they die. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to fight. They don't know how to survive. They're entering the world's most lethal environment where one mistake results in a life termination event. This is a very sad state of affairs, and Europe is to blame. Europe and the United States. You know, we're the ones that pushed Ukraine into this fight, and we're the ones who gleefully have said to the last Ukrainian. Well, that's the direction we're heading right now. If this continues, this war will be fought to the last Ukrainian.
Well, as you rightly said, or inferred there, the United States is primarily to blame for pushing Ukraine into this war, but the Europeans are definitely to blame for the fact that it is not yet even at the negotiating table, never mind resolved. What, given all that you've just said, and the power of it, and the horror of it, how can these European statesmen still be refusing to make a deal? How can they justify sending more and more Ukrainians into the maw, into the mud, into the graveyard?
One of the more unforgiving aspects of this conflict are the lies being told by the West to itself. You know, in order to justify the actions that Europe has embraced, that the United Kingdom has embraced, of sustaining this conflict, you have to accept at face value the notion that Russia cannot sustain its efforts, that Russia is on its last legs. And only then can you justify asking Ukraine for the last full measure. Give it all, boys, give it all. One last time into the breach. We've got this one. Just hold out. The Russians will collapse. But the Russians aren't going to collapse. It's an absolute lie that's being told to themselves. And the sad thing is, the leadership knows it's a lie. I can't for a minute believe that senior European politicians, maybe politicians are capable of fooling themselves, but the military is not. And the military knows the truth, that this is an unwinnable conflict. Notice every time a general leaves their official position and starts speaking out, with the exception of American generals who sell their souls to mainstream media to tell whatever lies they're ordered to spoon feed. But most times when general officers retire, they come out and they say the most amazing things, such as Russia will not lose this war. Russia will win this war. Europe can't beat them. NATO is incapable of doing X, Y, and Z. This is the truth, the harsh truth. Politicians can't say it because politicians would lose their jobs. And we all know, with few exceptions, yourself included, that politicians will sell their soul to get reelected. They'll reinvent themselves. They'll tell whatever lie needs to be told to get reelected. And right now you have a certain political and economic elite in Europe that have invested so much political capital into the notion that Russia can be defeated, that Ukraine can win, and that therefore Europe can win, that they're going to believe any lie told to them, even if they know it's a lie.
Now, Donald Trump famously dodged the Vietnam War four times. He declined to be drafted, and his bone spur problem was such that he couldn't be forced to. And yet, to be fair, he's the only world leader that you get the impression would like the war to end. The rest, liberal Democrats, Christian Democrats, social Democrats, Democrats all, they're gung-ho for the war. I mean, I've heard of cross-dressing, but it's getting absurd.
It is, but I would even say that Donald Trump at this juncture only plays lip service to bringing the war to an end. He sounds good to a point. But at the end of the day, if you want the war to end, then you want the war to end. What Donald Trump is, he wants the war to end on terms favorable to the national security objectives of the United States, which means that he wants the war to end on terms unacceptable to Russia, so that Russia will be subordinated to the United States, so Russia will be defeated by Europe and the United States. And this is unrealistic. So he doesn't want the war to end. He wants to win the war. That's what he wants. He should be more honest about it. Not that he wants the war to end, but that he wants to win the war. If he said that, I'd have a lot more respect for the guy, because if you want this war to end, then you have to acknowledge the root causes of this conflict, and you have to acknowledge that the Russians are justified in saying that this war cannot end if all it does is create the conditions for the war to resume 5 years from now. That when this war ends, it must prevent war from restarting for decades, for generations. We don't want to be doing this over and over and over again. Donald Trump refuses to have that conversation.
And that's why Budapest hasn't happened?
Yep. Again, Donald Trump wants, something interesting has happened, George, in the last couple of days. You know, the Russians have been doing their best to give Donald Trump a chance to be the peace president he wants to be. And so they have verbally left the door open for diplomacy. But when you look at the Russians' real actions, they've made no major deviation from this algorithmic war of attrition. They've been staying the course. And with Budapest, basically the Russians had put the United States on notice about what the reality of their terms of conflict termination would be, and that they will not alter these terms. And yet Donald Trump, once again, his administration, primarily Marco Rubio, keep telling the Russians, you have to come to the table with a workable plan, a plan that's acceptable to us. And because Russia refused to do that, Budapest did not occur. In the aftermath of that, you now have the Russian Foreign Ministry saying, we don't see a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in the future until the United States is able to come to the table with a workable peace plan. They flipped the script. No longer is the onus on Russia to come up with a plan. Russia's saying, no, we got the trajectory we want, that we're comfortable with. We'll do this forever. If you want this war to end, you have to come to the table with a plan that conforms to our needs, not the other way around. It's a major power shift in terms of, who's calling the shots. Donald Trump thought that he was in the driver's seat. He's now in the passenger seat, and Russia's calling the shots.
Now, you were, of course, and still are, extremely proud of the U.S. Marines. I've seen you. I know you well. I know that the Corps means a lot to you. You can't be relishing the possibility of your regiment landing on the beaches of Venezuela, because I know that you know that any such action will be resisted to the nth degree, and it will not be pretty.
One of my mentors, a man who I held in the highest regard, George Murdoch Connell, was a colonel in the United States Marines, and he was a lieutenant and then later a captain in a Marine battalion that was called the Walking Dead, and they earned that title because they suffered the highest casualty rate in all of Vietnam of any Marine Corps unit. Vietnam was a trap. We sent our Marines into Da Nang to secure an airfield from hostile attack that didn't stop. So we had to keep pushing patrols out further and further and further, becoming more and more engaged with the North Vietnamese, with the Viet Cong. We had to reinforce till we had an entire division inside North Vietnam, or in South Vietnam, fighting in the northern part of South Vietnam. It was a disaster of a war for the United States Marine Corps. That doesn't mean that George Murdoch Connell wasn't an honorable man. It doesn't mean that the Marines he led in combat weren't honorable men. These were honorable people called upon to do a dishonorable task, invading, killing people in a foreign country that were not posing a direct threat against the United States of America. This is how I feel about the Marines today. I know somewhere out there right now, there's a Marine colonel who is the modern day equivalent of George Murdoch Connell, a man of honor, a man of integrity, whose number one responsibility is to ensure that not only he accomplishes the lawful orders given to him, but he brings as many of his Marines, hopefully all of his Marines, home alive. And he's being prepared. He has to prepare to go execute a mission that he knows in his heart of hearts is going to be another Vietnam. And this is the saddest thing of all, because these Marines will do this job. They will disembark. They will land on Venezuelan soil, and they will close with and engage the Venezuelans, who we have to call enemies, even though they're not our enemies. And Marines will die and Venezuelans will die, and it will be horrible, and it's going to haunt our country for generations, and it's going to haunt the Venezuelans for generations, and it doesn't need to happen. Don't blame the Marines. Blame the people above. Blame the people who issue the orders. This is a war that does not need to be fought. Maduro is ready for peace right now. He has said, if this is about oil, for God's sake, come in, develop the oil. I'll sell it to you at whatever discount you want. I do not want a war. This is not about drugs. James Story, an American diplomat I know very well, was the number 2 man in Caracas before the embassy evacuated to Colombia, and he ran the covert programs to undermine Venezuela during the first Trump administration and into the Biden administration. He has just recently come out and said, this isn't about drugs. There's not this narco stuff going on. This is about oil. This is about resources. Straight up being honest about it. I mean, I don't agree with his desire to overthrow Maduro, but at least he's honest about what it's about. It's about oil. It's not about drugs. And yet we have a commander-in-chief and the military committing war crimes as we speak. I want to remind people, Lindsey Graham got on TV and cackled about Maduro's fate. He said Maduro is indicted in a New York court, in a federal court, of a narco trafficking. Hey, Lindsey, you were a lawyer. You do know that an indictment is not a finding of guilt, that actually Maduro is innocent of all charges until which time he is found guilty at trial, and that has not happened. And just because a New York federal court indicted him through a grand jury, you can indict a ham sandwich in a grand jury. It doesn't mean that your case is rock solid. It means it's political in nature. This is a political indictment designed to create cover to justify an illegal invasion of Venezuela. We all know that it's happening. My country has stopped being the constitutional republic that it aspired to be. we're supposed to be something better than this. And yet we have a president of the United States who openly brags about committing murder, which is a war crime. We have senators that brag about our potential to invade and occupy a nation and murder people without Congress doing its constitutional duty of declaring war. And unfortunately, we have a military that forgot the Nuremberg trial's greatest finding, that obeying an order is not an excuse for committing a crime. And if you're out there killing Venezuelan fishermen or people that we don't know who they are, you're committing a crime.
Couldn't get much more powerful an indictment than the one you've just delivered. Scott Ritter, as always, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Well, that was as powerful an argument for not invading Venezuela as it's possible to muster. And yet, it seems that they are about to do so. Let me take a quick break, and then it's your calls right up until Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show, and I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Do you support the introduction of digital ID? Well, virtually nobody does. And the British Prime Minister, the most unpopular Prime Minister there has ever been, has made this his flagship policy. Makes you wonder if he is going to survive. Do you support the introduction of digital ID, yes or no? Let's take Mehmet in London on Trump. Mehmet, welcome. What would you want to say?
Respect to Scott, I don't believe Russia's anywhere near finished. I think Russia is waiting to see what happens with Israel. Yahoo and Trump need to be stopped, because if they get away with what they're doing and they do clean up the Gaza Strip, that's the collapse of law and order. That's when Russia can say, you know what, I'm making my own rules. The whole world will say, we're making our own rules, and you can't come and say, stop that, because they'll just all point to Israel. Now, they could use the 25th Amendment and use that treason to get him out. He doesn't want a war with Venezuela. He wants to invoke the Illegal Aliens Act, so he can put the Marines on the streets in America. He has no intention of handing over the white keys to anybody. He's already dismantling the Constitution, and no one's saying nothing. Trump is a man that's never had said no to him his whole life. And now he's got the Army, Navy, Air Force at his fingertips with all this and all the wars that are going on is because of him. Israel, and he
I
isn't
don't.
complicit.
I don't. Let me just stop you for. Let me stop you for a minute. I'll let you back in. You can't possibly say that these wars are his responsibility, because the Israel-Palestine war has been going on for 77 years. The state of war between the United States and Iran has been going on for 45 years. The hostility between the U.S. and Korea, where in the next couple of days, I think Trump is going to meet the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, dates back even longer than I've been alive, so more than 70 years. And I could go on. These wars were not started by Trump, but the Venezuelan war will be his war. It will have been started by him, and it will be the cross on which he is finally terminated, not just in reality, in office, but in history. He will be, as Lyndon B. Johnson was remembered, only for one thing: the idiotic blundering deeper and deeper into the swamp of Vietnam. Last word to you, Mehmet.
I disagree with you, George. He's been bombing Iraq, Yemen, and Iran, everywhere. He's bombing it. Anyway, that's besides the point. The point
sure,
I'm
yeah,
trying
but he
to
didn't
make,
start it.
The point I'm
My
trying
point
to make,
is he
George,
didn't start it.
he ain't stopping it. The point I'm trying to make is
No.
he's made the UN
That's
look
right.
absolutely useless. How can a country that is not complicit enabling a destruction and a genocide be allowed to vote in the UN to veto every peace talk there is? And making the UN look useless. The unanimous vote has got to go, and it's got to go to majority vote. So one country, who is the enabler to stop it? Come on, George. They're making the UN, the ICC...
No, I agree with that, but of course you can't. I mean, of course I agree with that, Mehmet, but you can't achieve that, because that would require unanimous vote of the Security Council to abolish the veto power, and they're not going to do that. And so to advance it as a demand, whilst agitationally useful, is practically useless, because it cannot be achieved. The US would have to vote to remove its own veto power in the United Nations, and it will not. The United Nations looks useless because it is useless. And as far as I'm concerned, we need new international organizations. We've got them in the BRICS, we've got the SCO, we've got the Eurasian conference, which I have been attending for the last couple of days. We can have our own international law, because there ain't no international law to be found on the other side of the fence. Mehmet, very good points you made there. Of course, I'm not saying that Trump isn't fighting wars everywhere. I'm just demurring that he started them. He did not, but he would be the one who started the war on Venezuela. Now look, let me give you the regular update on how the podcast is doing. We're in the top 10 for politics in Serbia, Gambia, Kyrgyzstan, Zimbabwe, and Guatemala. What a wonderful collection of continents, of language groups. What a wonderful collection of top 10s to be in. We're in the top 100 for politics in the UK, Israel, Australia, and Canada. You can download the podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. Let's go to California. Well, it's pretty cold here. If I could go to California, Saf, I definitely would. Tell us, what do you want to say about Palestine?
Hey, George, great fan, great admirer. I love your show. I watch both shows. Amazing work, amazing commitment, lifelong journey, and I appreciate everything what you are doing for the human beings. I would like to comment. This is my first time, by the way. I live in California, 25 miles away from San Francisco and Walnut Creek, and this is my first time. I would like to comment on one issue, and then I would ask you a question. You can do it in the end. Number one, sure. They have this on Palestine issue. They have formed this military kind of security team, taking people from different countries. Israel has objected on Turkey, but not on Pakistani military. As you know, countries have militaries, but in Pakistan, military has a country. So now you remember more than me, but I do remember, though I was too young, but I have heard and known for all my life the Black September, what happened in Jordan under then General Zia, but he was Brigadier Ziaul Haq at that time when he killed thousands of Palestinian people and injured thousands. And now the same military, which always tried to be friendly with Israel and like other Arab nations, they tried in Musharraf time, they tried every time, but because of public opinion, they were failed. But now, because it is very strict rule in Pakistan, when no demonstration is allowed in favor of Palestine against this genocide, nothing, all media, everything is under control, strict control. But now they are coming close to this dream of their wonder that they will be with side by side with working with Israel. What I don't know how it will work. They will be protecting Jared Kushner's project, or they will be protecting Israelis from Hamas, or what will be the end result? What do you think, sir? That there's an objection on Turkey.
It's a wonderful call. It's a wonderful call, Saf, and I let it run because of the extreme importance of it, not just to the worldwide audience, but to me as a much decorated and long-standing friend of Pakistan. I can say that my best friends are Pakistanis, and I don't want to see them disgrace their country and their people and their faith by becoming a mercenary force for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. And I pray that that does not happen. But if they do go, they will be precisely that. They're not going to protect the Palestinians from the Israelis. They're going to protect the Israelis from the Palestinians, and they're going to protect the casino owners, the bordello operators, the condominium builders that will be implementing Kushner's plan. So you're right to recall, and I recall it, alas, more vividly than you because I was not too, but Black September in Jordan in 1970 did indeed see the Pakistani army kill thousands of Palestinians in the camps on behalf of then King Hussein of Jordan. Netanyahu isn't King Hussein of Jordan. It was bad enough what Pakistan did in Black September of 1970 on behalf of King Hussein. It will be an unpardonable crime, sin, if Pakistan repeats that for Kushner and Netanyahu, and I pray that they will not. Thanks for the call. Here's some comments. Kuplex says, even Japan didn't follow orders from Trump. They are sticking to buying oil from Russia. And Moss Patchouli says, CIA mercenaries caught trying to overthrow Maduro today. And Arsenal says, 305 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. But Trump says it's about fentanyl. And Kylo 1KO says the West failed to get their hands on Russia's resources and are now the US under false pretense on the verge of attacking Venezuela. Stadex 4 says the accusation of Maduro being a drug lord is the same tactic as the accusation of Saddam of having weapons of mass destruction. Indeed it does. There's a legend on the line. It's May in Oklahoma. May, what's rattling? What have you got?
Hey, George, how are you doing? Much love
all
to
good,
you
all
and
good,
Gayatri
sister.
and your whole family and team.
Thank you.
I do want to say something, though. When we talked on Sunday, we were talking about the situation in the U.S., and I don't necessarily expect you to cover what's going on in the U.S., but I did want to make one point. I agree with you that most countries deserve the government they have, especially if they're supposedly allowed to vote. But it's gotten so bad in the United States with all these corporations that we don't really get to pick our candidates, and we don't really get to decide what the votes are going to be, I believe. They've done so much voter fraud. And that I don't mean the voters. I mean the election boards changing the locations of the voting at the very last minute, shutting them down. So especially vulnerable populations are completely disenfranchised. So I'm not sure that we have the government that we really deserve. But until Americans wake up and say no more, I agree with you, we're kind of stuck with it. The main reason, though, that I called is about Venezuela. I heard today that Venezuela has gotten missiles from Russia. And I think it's turning into Venezuela saying FAFO to the United States. You know, it's like, yes, you can try and invade, but we're going to make your lives a living hell. And it's going to cost you a lot of military personnel. It's going to cost what little reputation the U.S. still has. And it's just crazy because, like everyone is saying, Maduro said, if you want the oil, come get the oil. We'll make a deal. No problem. And yet, crazy Rubio, who is just full of hate for everybody, including the president, he's wanting to have a war every possible place he can have one. Well, okay, you sign up, you enlist, and you serve in the military, Mr. Rubio, and you can have a little bit more right to say where these wars are going to be. But it's going to be our young people who die in this. And just like Ukraine's killing all their young people, I mean, what kind of future is Ukraine ever going to have when nobody's left. And so I'm just I'm frustrated, but I'm proud of Venezuela for standing up on their hind legs and saying, "Oh, okay, you want to face Russia's missiles? Yeah, we can do that. No problem. Let's go." Have you heard about this, and what do you think?
I have, May, and I've been studying it. Thanks for the call, as always, legendary May in Oklahoma. I can certainly confirm that Venezuela now has the full complement of anti-ship missiles that have been supplied by Russia and by China, and so every one of those ships that are sitting off the coast of Venezuela are sitting targets for those anti-ship missiles, and they're good anti-ship missiles. The US will not be able to shoot most of them down. And so you need to prepare for a lot of naval wreckage, May. You need to prepare for a lot of sailors who didn't ask to be there, were ordered to be there, coming home in coffins. And if the invasion goes ahead, the same will be true of the US Marines, because the Venezuelan people, those that support the government, I'm not pretending, by the way, that everybody in Venezuela supports the government. They don't. Maybe 40% of the people vote against the government. And of those, maybe 25% would be wishing for the Americans to invade. But the others would say, we don't support the government, but we're not going to support a foreign invasion of our country. We're not going to support foreigners bombarding our country. And so a very clear 75% of the people of Venezuela will either passively or actively oppose any American aggression against their country. And that's a lot of people. And, you know, the terrain of Venezuela could not be bettered. It's better than Vietnam for guerrilla warfare. I talked about the jungles and the mountains and the mountain jungles, but the barrios themselves, the narrow streets on the hillsides, will be perfect for guerrilla warfare. And Venezuela, which has a very large conventional army, will quickly take to the hills, will quickly take to the jungles, will quickly take to the alleys and the byways of the barrio. But the mass of the people, never mind the big standing army, the mass of the people have now been armed, and they know that the only government that has ever cared for them is the Chavista government. First of Hugo Chavez, then of Nicolas Maduro. They know that no power imposed by American guns is going to give a toss about their lives up there on the barrios, and they will fight. And they're all armed. Millions are now under arms in Venezuela. Don't do it, Donny. Your bone spurs will not save you. Thanks, May. Now, there's a Workers' Party live stream taking place this Sunday, 2nd of November. Call the Doctor with Dr. Bob Gill and my parliamentary colleague Chris Williamson. NHS on call. It starts at 5 p.m. UK, and you can check out the Workers' Party X space. Now, Ali is in Leeds. Wants to talk about the Max Blumenthal documentary. Go ahead, Ali.
Hello, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, good. Thank you. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I was just calling today to talk about Max Blumenthal's new documentary on the grey zone. It was called The Uncaptured Jews in the Islamic Republic of Iran. If you watch it, you understand how deeply rooted the Persians and the Jews actually are. not just historically, but actually ethnically. As you know yourself, you visited Iran. Iran is the home to the largest Jewish population in the Middle East outside of Israel. And, you know, they continue to practice their faith very freely there. But what struck me the most was the historical and the genetic evidence showing that Iran's Jewish community is actually more connected to the ancient Jews of the Middle East than the current Israelis. That's so as you know, it's in contrast to the Ashkenazi Jews whose ancestry, as studies from the institution of Tel Aviv University have shown, it's largely Southern European rather than from the Levantine. Even the tombs of Mordechai and Esther, they're quite prominent figures in Judaism. They are actually in Iran, which it shows it in the documentary, which I didn't even know. And also the tomb, the Purim story. So that's Esther and Mordechai.
Yeah.
So they're actually buried in Iran. And the tomb of Prophet Daniel, and actually Jacob's granddaughter is also buried in Esfahan. So they've got really close ties to the Jews. And the irony is the Israeli government, which claims to represent all the Jews, is actually threatening to attack Iran, a nation that has actually preserved one of the oldest Jewish communities on the earth, on earth. So Persia was also a refugee for the Jews for over 1,000 years after Cyrus the Great freedom. So it's quite possible that many modern-day Iranians, even if they're Muslim, carry some Jewish ancestry in their bloodline. Just wanted to share my thoughts on that, what I found to be a very good documentary. And another thing also, it'd be great if you can get Professor Zhang on your show. He's someone I've been listening to quite a lot lately, and I'll be quite intrigued to see what he says about a lot of the topics we talk about on your show. Thanks, George.
Beautiful call, Ali, in Leeds, in England. I haven't seen Max's documentary yet, though I was with him when he went with his good wife to Esther and Mordecai's home. He was preparing at least to do so. And I'm glad that he made it and that the documentary is now out. Because I've been traveling so much, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I definitely will. Gayatri and I visited at least one, it might have been two, of the synagogues in Tehran. There are 100 synagogues in Iran, and not one of them has a single security guard on it. Not a policeman, not a private security guard, because none of them need security, because the Iranian Jews are part of Iranian society. Nobody wishes them ill. Nobody blames them for the crimes of the state of Israel. They are the least anti-Semitic people you could possibly imagine, and as you've just pointed out, they're more Semitic than these imposters in power in Tel Aviv and in occupied Jerusalem. So I will watch it. I hope everyone watches it. And Max Blumenthal is my hero. May God preserve him. Now, MOATS big donors tonight are up in lights now. A big thank you to Derek Marshall, Poe Tham, who's a generous weekly donor, Tom Loughran, James Preston, and Mortaz Salah. A big thanks to each and every one of you, and a big thanks to those who haven't yet donated but are going to on the website moats.tv. Now, my good wife, Gayatri, joins me now for the social media roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, still in Minsk, but we have concluded our Eurasian Security Conference by now. And apart from it being, of course, of great importance, it was somehow a bit overshadowed by this border issue. And I don't know if the audience have gotten the grasp of it. It started off with these helium balloons that were sighted by the Lithuanian borders, right? This reminds us of the 2023 sighting of balloons in the US.
China balloons.
All the way in the US, the Chinese sent their spies through balloons. I mean, it's as ridiculous as that, right? So this caused all this chaos, and all the delegates, so many, most of them from Western Europe, the main continent, had difficulties coming here. And now the Lithuanians have indefinitely closed the borders. And, well, not us, but other participants and delegates and experts now have to go 3 times around the world before they get back home. Now,
I spoke to one, by the way,
yes,
from Finland, which is an hour away, who's going to have to fly to Dubai in order to fly back to Finland.
Yes, this is the ludicrous world we live in. And the non-elected president of the EU, von der Leyen, has weighed in, saying Europe stands in full solidarity with Lithuania in the face of the persistent incursions of helium smuggling balloons into its airspace. This is destabilization, and this is provocation. We call it by its name, a hybrid threat. We will not tolerate it.
It's cigarette smuggling. The cigarettes are bound for Lithuania, not for Belarus. It's customers dodging the tax on cigarettes in Lithuania. And yet von der Leyen is giving her full support.
Yes, and accelerating their flagship eastern flank. I mean, how don't they realize it is them who are destabilizing the world? It is them who are provoking the world, and in this case, Russia. So this is the eastern flank. In the far eastern flank, things haven't stood still. We've just come from China, we've come from Xinjiang to debunk basically one of these lies that the West keeps on throwing at us about the Uyghurs and how they're oppressed, a genocide. Never mind oppressed, a genocide. Well, so much of a genocide we've witnessed in the wonderful week we were in Xinjiang. The other lie, or the other tool they use is, of course, Taiwan. And what happened in Taiwan today? They received their first IPAC delegation. And they were so proud of it.
What, the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee is in Taiwan?
Well, they thought, why not? They
Explain.
Well, so some have expressed that they see the Israel. Look, they even received this wonderful silver appreciation of Taiwan, U.S., and Israel.
Oh my God! That's even more vulgar than the President Trump's been getting.
Of more gold, yes. But why not? They see Israel's defense system as a model, and yada yada yada. So this is another.
Taiwan is now being billed as the Israel of the Far East.
Yeah, and their players are playing it up. And some observers have been saying that actually Israel has been looking east for some time because the West is a bit falling apart culturally and socially.
You think God promised them Taiwan?
Perhaps. So this is an interesting phenomenon. And so let's see how far this will develop. The first and hopefully not of many more. Sticking to China, Nexperia, you know, that Chinese company, or what used to be Chinese, then
now
became Dutch.
So they didn't even go Dutch, they just took it over.
They just took it over, yeah, exactly. If only they would go Dutch. But they've come back, right? So they've come back with reopening it and transactions having to be paid half in RMB. Did you see
I
that?
didn't know. It's been resolved then.
Yes, but with stricter implications, of course. So, I mean, whatever the Dutch tried to do,
so they've put the Chinaman back in power in the company.
But they're going to start operating again in another manner so that they can resupply the chips. But there's one of the conditions that they have to be paid in RMB.
Wow. You know, Trump's going to come a cropper in these talks with Xi Jinping. The tables have turned.
Yeah.
I mean, really decisively turned. And that's going to be reflected in the trade agreement that they reach. And if it isn't, then it won't be reached.
No.
China now, to use a Trumpism, holds all the cards. Their control of the processing of rare earths. There are rare earths other places, but they can't polish them in the way that they need to be polished. Mm-hmm. China controls 90% of the processing of rare earth materials. and even the warplanes of the United States Air Force require Chinese processed rare earth materials in order to work.
Yeah.
If you've got that kind of leverage, well, you call the shots as to what tariffs there are going to be.
I know, because I was talking about the focus on Asia. Trump made a visit to Malaysia for the ASEAN, the 47th ASEAN
as a
meeting.
person who likes Malaysia, I was really horrified by it.
It was a bit disappointing. But ASEAN now is suddenly on the map. I mean, ASEAN, the Association for the Southeast Asian Nation, has been around for some time. And now Trump and his delegation made an entry, tried to do some dancing and what have you not with the Prime Minister in Malaysia. But one of the major takeaways from this ASEAN meeting is that ASEAN has made a trade agreement, free trade agreement with China. This is one of the concrete answers. So Trump can dance whatever he wants. This is one of the concrete outcomes.
YMCA is dancing too. Well, look, it's been marvelous for us. I hope it was for you. We'll be leaving Minsk for Moscow, and probably the next show will come from Moscow. And no sanctions will be broken in the doing. Thanks very much for watching. It's been the mother of all talk shows. Tell your friends to join us on Sunday. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.